Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review The Descent. Scream your last breath.
Written and directed by Neil Marshall, starring Shauna Macdonald, Natalie Mendoza, Alex Reid, Saskia Mulder, Mayanna Buring, and Nora Jane Noon. After the tragic loss of her daughter, Sarah and some friends decide to go cave diving. But little do they know, Juno, one of the women, brought them to some uncharted caves. And now they need to fight for survival to get out. This is a recommendation from Deke over on Patreon. He said there's two movies that every horror movie review channel needs to have on their channel. The first one was Pieces, which we recently reviewed, and the second is Descent. And again, he's correct. A lot of people recommend this movie. I haven't seen it in about 15 years, since like the day it was released. And it's because I'm claustrophobic as hell, so this movie isn't a treat to watch for me. For this review, we will be talking kind of spoilers. We're gonna talk about something major that happens about halfway through that is important to our review, but we're gonna try to avoid any of like the major kills and stuff. So what do we like?
I'm gonna kick it off with the atmosphere. Whether they were actually in a cave or built these sets, it made you feel like you were trapped. Like you felt claustrophobic when you're watching them going through these little tiny like hand-sized tunnels.
It definitely put me on edge like every moment. Even just jumping into the cave at first, you're like, oh, well, that's a long way down. What do they do now? Like they're just gonna go through these tunnels and hope to get out? Like that's nuts to me. And so seeing them kind of squirm their way through these smaller and smaller tunnels really got to me. I was on edge for a lot of this movie, and it has to do with like the atmosphere. It's just insane.
The second you first see one of those rocks just like collapse, you're just like, oh, well, now what's gonna happen?
And I think that's what's great about this movie is the fact that it doesn't really give you a chance to catch your breath, because as they're doing one thing, something else kind of happens. Like a tunnel collapsing, or, the spoiler territory here, these little golem looking dudes running around this cavern, they'll like jump out of nowhere. So something crazy will happen. Maybe somebody dies or they fall or something, and then you think that they're about to like sulk or mourn their friend, and they just don't have a chance because there's another one of them just running at them. And so about halfway through, everything just ramps up and you can't catch your breath.
Yeah, I really liked how like the twist came in with they look like orcs from Lord of the Rings. We don't actually know whether they're like humans that have evolved or bats that have evolved.
No, they've taken on more traits of bats to live in like dark places. Not bats growing fucking legs.
How do you think the fish came out of the water?
Do you think this looks more like a bat or more like a man?
It looks like an orc, and I don't know how orcs were born.
Well, those don't exist, Judd.
Not only are our characters facing the elements of this uncharted cave, but they're also having to deal with the issue of the unknown creatures that are in front of them. And as they progress further, they learn more about how to defend themselves against the creatures. Cause like you're kind of like on the edge, just being like, oh yeah, like, oh, get the pickaxe and go for them, or like use a rock, or you can take them on because they can't see. You get really involved in this film.
And I think what's great about all of it is the camera work and the lack of being able to see or predict what's going to happen. In a cave, you're disoriented just like the characters are, and if a character can't see 10 feet in front of them, we can't either. So there's many times where the entire screen will be black except for where a spotlight might be shining. And it really builds up some great tension and some effective jump scares as well. Nothing really felt forced when it came to the scares, and there's probably about 6 or 7 really good jump scares. I also really like the lighting because they have limited lighting. They have what you would expect. Like they've got their lights on their helmets, they've got some flares, and they've got some torches. But what's great and makes it feel different is like as they progress to the movie, they use different colored lights. So they have like flares at the beginning, they have torches towards the end, there's some green glow sticks, and then there's the combination of fire and the glow sticks. So it makes just like this rocky terrain look unique in many different situations. And I loved it. Also, Sarah as a character has a great arc. Like I loved her going from dealing with grief and loss to kind of finding her own. As she's kind of struggling through this cave, she's put in worse and worse situations, and she just becomes an absolute badass by the end of it, and she was just fantastic.
And that could go with like basically most of the characters in this film. They had strong character traits to them. They were smart with a lot of the decisions they made. They knew when to be quiet, they knew when to attack, and they knew when to run.
Except Holly. She's a wild one, and she was just running and sliding wherever she wanted.
She lived for the thrill.
And also was panicking and running and flailing, which is probably strange because everyone else you would think would be doing that. Although I think if I was in that situation, I would pass out. I would be like Sarah when she was like in that little tunnel. I would just be like, I'm stuck. And this is my life now. I'm fucking panicking just thinking about it. I hate this.
Just having your shoulders pinned against a rock and your head just poking out like a
right,
turtle.
like even when they're just like worming their way through, you're like, what if you can't get your arm out? There's 6 or 7 of you going through this little passage. What happens if you're either the last one and you're stuck, or if you're the first one, you're like, oh, we hit a dead end. You can't turn around, so you just gotta like try to go back, which is way harder than going forward. Oh my God, it's stressing me out. And that's what's really great. The tension of this whole movie, from the caves to the creatures and discovering what the hell's even going on, it's top notch. Now, what didn't we like?
I actually didn't like the reveal of the creatures. When the characters actually first interact with the creatures, it's a great moment. They just shine the light and there's the creature just standing over top of them. But prior to this, we had a shot with Sarah where she like shines a light on it, just like hunched over as if it's like crawling through the rocks. I think it would have been a stronger like OMG moment if we just heard noises and Sarah was like, oh, I swear I saw something, I swear I saw something. And then this is the first time we see it. Because once we as an audience know, the reveal is like not as impactful.
There's enough noises going on in the background that you could have just suspected, like, wait, there's something weird here. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a humanoid creature. I don't know if it's an animal. We don't know at that point. And so, yeah, I agree. That one shot shouldn't have been there because it kind of gives it away. As much as I understood why the camera moved the way that it did, it was purposely trying to disorient the audience, but there are times when people were fighting these creatures and it got too distracting. It would jump all over the place to the point where there's a scene where Juno is fighting one creature and it looks like she's going back and forth killing multiple things, and there's a couple other scenes where you just kind of get lost in the action because not only is the environment hard to kind of see what's going on, and that's fine, but like they're cutting as well, so you don't have a sense of where the hell you are.
I mentioned how I liked how smart the characters were in their decision making when it came to like handling these creatures. What I thought was really dumb is someone sees a bloody handprint on the wall, someone sees like old equipment, and they don't acknowledge it, especially because they know this is supposed to be an uncharted like cave. These are like key things that probably should be brought up before they go like exploring into the cave.
I have a counter for this. They didn't know it was uncharted at that time. Both times they didn't know yet. It was after, once they got through into the next chamber is when they learned about it.
Oh, you should still talk about blood on the bloody hands on the wall.
If I saw blood anywhere, I'll tell you. Especially if it's in a place where blood shouldn't be.
Like full on handprint.
I'm telling everybody about that. Like, hey guys, check this out. We just entered this cave. Perhaps we should not enter this cave.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but I did not like the ending. Like the actual final shot, I was not a fan of. I enjoyed everything up to that point, and then I was just like, huh, so this is how it's gonna be.
I can see how people would be aggravated by that. The footage that I'm showing is not the ending, by the way. Let us know your thoughts on the ending, because I think this is probably something people will either like or dislike. I don't think there's any middle ground. I think this is gonna be a polarizing topic. Now it's time for our final thoughts and ratings. I absolutely love The Descent. I often see it on top 10 lists for like hidden gems, and it's talked about a lot in the horror community, but I hadn't seen it for 15 years. I'm glad we finally watched it because now I can finally agree with everyone. I loved it. The claustrophobia really got to me. The tension throughout, just being in a cave frightened me, to the scares that were really great, and just the introduction of the creatures and kind of like the slow rollout of them, I thought was awesome. I liked our characters. I liked the different like character arcs for both Juno and Sarah, and I just really enjoyed it from beginning to end. There's definitely some dated CG and a few moments that I wasn't a huge fan of, but nothing that took away from the film for me. So I'm gonna give this 5 party glasses out of 5.
I had a really good time watching The Descent. I enjoyed the atmosphere of this movie. It was well shot, and it had a really good pace to it. I was always on the edge of my seat, whether it was them crawling through one of the tunnels in the cave, potentially getting trapped, or dealing with these creatures. There was just always something going on that I was interested and invested in. My biggest issue would probably be how the film ended with its final shot, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who feel the same way as I do. I also didn't like how the creatures were revealed. I wish they would have just had that one big scare with the night vision on, because that would have had a stronger impact than us actually seeing a full body shot of the creature like seconds before. But all that aside, this is a fantastic film. It's a lot of fun and I do recommend it. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this film 4 morning stretches out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, links are in the description. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with everything Bloodbath and beyond.